Order. Under disclosure of pecuniary interest, we have none at this time. If at some point throughout this meeting a member feels they have a pecuniary interest, please let us know for the record. Under deputations, petitions, and public meetings, we have the Director of Economic Development and Tourism and the consultant team from the Downtown Master Plan to make a presentation with respect to the Downtown Master Plan. So without further ado, Andrew and Mr. Rice, the floor is yours.
Okay. Could we turn on? Just to make it a little easier to see the presentation. Your Worship, members of committee, we're thrilled to be here today to present what we're going to call the implementation component of the plan. The last presentation we did with the public in January.
Andrew, can I, for the presentation, I think we should turn off the fans so that your voice carries a little better.
Noise, good idea. I can't hear. I can't.
Okay, I'll try and I'll talk up.
Yeah.
Last presentation that we gave to the public back just prior to the Christmas holidays. We're good?
We're good.
Okay. Showed a vision or a concept. And what we want to do today is talk a little bit about how you take a plan from pretty drawing to getting it built. It's a complicated process. We're going to be sharing a lot of information with you, but I think we've got the right people in the room to walk council through and those in the audience through how this can happen. I wanted to start by just making a couple comments and then I'll turn the floor over to Stephen Rice. This is about restarting the economic engine of Wasaga Beach. The main end was the economic engine for almost 80 years. Over the last 3 to 4 decades, that engine has declined. And I think it's fair to say that primarily the last decade we've been firing on 1 of 6 cylinders at best. Downtown is a very small geographic area of Wasaga Beach, approximately 3% of the land area, but the economic potential of that 3% is enormous. And if we get this firing on all 6 cylinders, it benefits everyone in this town. It will ease the residential tax burden, help diversify our economy, and benefit everybody's wallet. That's the simple reality. We believe, the team believes, that we've presented a compelling vision that, from what we can gather, the majority of residents, business owners, and relevant stakeholders seem to be embracing, and now it's about how you make this real. Fran will be talking about the economic impacts of the initial phases of what we can do here. And I wanted to share with council as a sidebar, what we are talking about is comparable to what the Village at Blue did for Simcoe County. That was extremely an enormous economic impact. This is on par with that. The Village at Blue rallied the province to help. A special ministerial workforce was established, and it said this is a key priority of ours to make real. We're all going to rally around that municipality and collectively pool our resources to make this real. I believe very strongly that this has the potential to gain the same kind of assistance from other levels of government. This plan represents a step change for Wasaga Beach, a paradigm shift, there's no question. What we see in Wasaga Beach today that has evolved over a few decades, it didn't just happen. It was very deliberate, it was very carefully planned and scrutinized. What we are talking about today requires the same level of planning and scrutiny, but it requires a different lens. It requires taking off the suburban glasses and putting on the urban glasses. It's a different way of thinking that will impact everyone in this corporation. So there will be a bit of a learning curve, but I'm confident that we've got great staff in this corporation, and with the help of our community, we can make this real. Couple other points, the importance of the town. We all know the main end has had a few false starts in the past, primarily from the private sector. We know that if we leave it to the private sector only to deliver this plan, that it will not come to fruition. We know that from past experience. At best, if we were to do that, it would be slow to materialize, it would likely be sporadic in nature, and we would never achieve the kind of synergies required to create quality of place and the kind of place that tourists want to come to and spend dollars. So that's critical. There is a role for the town here. We can play a leadership role, and without that, this likely will not happen. Last comment is about process. So what we are doing today, we wanted to walk council through how you make this plan real. We'd like to hear any comments from council. The team will take that back and package that into the final report, and then that report will come back to council, hopefully for approval, and then we hopefully would start implementation. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Rice.
Thanks, Andrew. Mr. Mayor and council and citizens, residents of Wasaga Beach, and anybody who's interested in the outcome of this, thanks for coming and hearing what's been in progress now since August, early August we started. And I'm going to take you through, there's roughly 30, a little over 30 slides here. The first third is a history lesson of where we've been in the last 4 or 5 months. The middle section is starting to drill down on where we, what we achieved prior to Christmas and what we started to develop as a strategy for the physical plans that we see in these renderings. And then the third part is about implementation, and the sort of thing Andrew was talking about is the work that the town can do to guide this and the stages of implementation that we know, you know in your heart. When you see it on the wall, you'll see it makes sense. It's what's going to happen to help make anything like this take the next step. So without further ado, I'll just take, is this how we control this?
I don't know.
No?
Just the arrow keys on that keyboard. Just the right.
Maybe I have to, there we go, try this. Andrew, you wanted to refer to this because one of the things that Andrew mentioned is there's a different type of thinking that has to be brought to town planning to achieve these sorts of things, and there's some context that we do have to pay attention to in terms of official plan and so on.
Yeah, I just wanted to make council aware, on the beachfront itself, the lands are as of right today. So a lot of what you see in the concept plan, that could happen. On the mainland side, the area where the community has said, we think that's where the heart should be, these are examples of the current official plan policies. And part of why this area isn't working as well as it should today, again, it's what's in place today. It was a different mindset. These policies speak to the fact that that area is for tourists only, and it's not supposed to be for residents. I think through this process, we've clearly said, no, it should be the other way around. It should be for residents first and tourists second. So this is just an example of some of the things that we're going to have to go back and retool. So I just wanted to make council aware. This is an example of the step change that's required. When these were written, best thinking, best of intentions, but I think we're at a different place in our evolution now.
So we've been through a process, and I'm going to share that with you. The strategy has materialized in the master plan, which public saw, by and large, the outcome of that process is what everyone saw before Christmas. And the action plan is what we're here to talk about today. And some of you have been following this, and some of you might be new to this, so I'm going to aim to bring everyone up to speed to the same level if we can. The process, as we say, was really to improve quality of life and create a vibrant community in the downtown area. And now it wasn't anyone else's idea but your own that downtown should be somewhere in the neighborhood of where we landed here. And I'm going to take you a little bit through the process. We, over the last, leading up to Christmas from August to December, there were a number of public meetings, we had stakeholders meetings, we had meetings with the steering committee, and a lot of data collection, if you would, both from a planning and design standpoint, but also from our market analysts who were listening to and taking notes of all the goals that everyone was trying to achieve as we began developing thoughts about what the downtown plan would be. We have a community vision that's based on that input. We have market context that's come from our market analysts, and those folks are here with us today, so they'll be speaking to this. And we also have design and planning best practice. This is not something that just happens. You have to, what happened in Wasaga, perhaps since its fruition, was somewhat organic, but by people who had a mind about what they were going to achieve there. When you have an empty site, you have to start saying, okay, if I'm going to recreate or create something, I have to have a view about what that is and what it could look like. And that takes some vision, some context, some benchmarking of other projects where these things have been achieved. So we are now at a downtown master plan stage, and we're going to talk about the next steps after that. So during the discovery phase, we had lots of community meetings. People were putting their thoughts on paper about what they'd like to see. These are some words that emerged from that. The things that they didn't want to see, the things that they wanted to see more of, and the things that in the end would make a great community, not just for tourists, but also for the residents who live here. And these were all taken into account. You also remember that prior to this, your community had defined a boundary that's a little hard to see on here, but it's somewhere in and around this limit. It's not entirely on this drawing. And then we stuck that up on the wall after one of the sessions and said, okay, put your heart, take a plastic heart and stick it on the plan and tell us where you'd like the heart of the community to be. And it was an overwhelming focus on Maine, and with a big commitment to the area around the Beck in Maine, and another one over here at the end of Maine. So it just sort of gave us a snapshot view of what people were really, residents particularly, really were interested in seeing happen. That led to a design exercise that we shared with the public, and they came in on an evening. We presented some ideas and talked about these two major nodes. And in reality, it's a bit of a bifocal. I can say that because I wear them too. But there's two parts to this. There's here on the lower mainland area, here on Maine, and then there's of course this one over here on the beach. This being more about the economic and tourism side or the economics of the tourism of Wasaga Beach. This one here more about community services and community center, and trying to find that interrelation and trying to get a good connection between them all was a big part of the discussions. And we even looked at other towns in Ontario where things like town squares and the public realm, let's call it the open space, the streets and parks and civic centers, what those were like in scale in comparison to communities similar to or around the same size as Wasaga Beach, just for people to understand. And then the documentation phase is where we consolidated all those thoughts and started sharing views. And this was the very last of the two sets of drawings that were presented. But there were a number of plan diagrams and plans that were shared through the public process prior to that. Through it, we've had input from council. There's now an action plan. There's a final report that's in draft, and we're waiting to then deliver that to council for a decision to move forward. Before we can do that, we need to explain what's the implementation going to look like. What will be required by the community and the council and this corporation to take the idea that comes out of this and advance it. And we'll talk to that in a few minutes. It's not over. We're at the beginning of defining the future of Wasaga Beach, and it's going to take continued work on your parts to help realize that. There were also some principles. It's not just what do we all think, but there's also some guiding principles, and things have changed, as Andrew said. Promoting strong communities and strong economies within those communities and healthy environments to raise our families is is something that's mandated, if almost as strongly as mandated by the province. It's a very strong principle. They look for it in everything that they see in applications. So while it may not be law, it is a very strong suggestion that we all toe the line in creating complete communities. Start looking at densification and compaction, because we can't keep sprawling. This is not just an Ontario truth. This is a first world truth. And infrastructure makes compression and intensification makes our existing infrastructure more valuable, makes it more effective, and we're not spreading money over vast distances. And the efficiency of delivery of municipal services is really critical. And finally, it needs to conform, whatever we present, whatever we show to people outside of this community, outside of this room, needs to fire on those same principles, needs to address them. Otherwise, they're going to ask you, and you're going to get sent back to your classroom and asked to come back with the proper answer. So that is also, when we talk about best practice in planning, these are the kinds of things that we address, and it's implicit, it's buried into everything we've been doing on this plan. Other principles that have more to do with the project, Wasaga needs a rebranding, as Andrew referred to as a step change for Wasaga. We all love and remember parts of Wasaga that aren't here today. And if we're going to reboot an economy here, we have to reimagine what that is and make it inclusive and make it family friendly, because the broader audience we can reach, the better success we're going to have. So a combination of that and rebranding is really important, and that work has really got to start. This point here is about reframing the policy framework, revamping the policy framework, as Andrew referred to, those OP clauses that are just, among other things. Because without that, we have no framework in the planning statutes to guide us and to guide others. So we need, that needs to fall in line with this plan. Encouraging, we're not trying to take Wasaga Beach and turn it into downtown Toronto. We're not urbanizing for so many, 10 times coverage or anything like that, but we do need to start densifying. It makes sense, puts people in and around the places that they'd like to be, but in a form of housing in an urban realm that supports a good quality of life, and that's critical in our planning principles. The other thing that happens is, and I've heard this over and over again, why don't we just do a little bit first? Let's see how it goes. It's a little bit like setting the table for dinner, but only putting out the meat. There's no potatoes, there's no vegetables, there's not even a glass of wine on the table. You have to have a certain critical mass of things, a critical group of ingredients to make a decent meal. And the same thing here. If you don't have enough of some of all the things that interest people, you're going to be seen as a one-trick pony or a one-time hit. So you have to start thinking about, okay, who is the audience? What are the things they're going to want to do? And what is a good experience going to be made of? That I walked away at the end of the day and said, I had a great day at Wasaga. I hear more's coming, but I still had a great day because there was enough for me to do. We hear that now. We already know that through our stakeholders have told us there's not enough to do on the beach. And we know that we need to, if we believe in this plan, we need to make that happen. But the question is how much? And there's a balancing act there that hasn't really been struck yet, but we know it's usually more than what people initially think. That critical mass is a critical threshold that we have to cross. And that's something we still need to do together. So in this case, an 80-room boutique hotel doesn't sound like a huge step into the water, but it's more than a toe in the pond. We've got a lot of other things like that that are starting to cross into those elements and make sure that they're going to be there. So it's a complete experience, not a, if we just put a 80-room boutique hotel on the beach, that's what it'll be known as. Not many, you can't get many more people in 80 rooms than perhaps 4. So, so we really need more product here, more experiential opportunities for the beach and the town to survive, or to have a sustainable economic formula here. The other thing is, don't be the same as everyone else. And you know, what is unique about us and what's authentic, find those in the community. And that's a big part of our retail economist. He was saying, you know, it's not about more chain restaurants, chain stores, and nationals, and so on. It's about what's unique and what represents where you are, what makes you different. And it's got to be a reflection of the community that we're in. So that by itself helps to grow and sustain jobs within the community, but it also helps to identify the town differently from, say, others. And you know, it's not the mall approach, and that's something we have to bear in mind. Density on retail and rental and costs and all that sort of thing, that's also got to be balanced with public space. Where are we going to group together and have a festival? Where are we going to have an event, another event in town? Is there room for enough event in town? Because that's the sort of the special sauce that goes along with all the other ingredients, and we've got to make sure that that is in the plan. And as a community, you own that public realm. You know, you own the streets, you own the parks, you own the open space between the private lots. So that's a place where you can start to capitalize on that. And that goes to the next point, activating these big public spaces. We have in the plan one called Festival Square, which is down on the beach, and one called Town Square, which is at Main and Beck, thereabouts. And as for programmed events, festivals, activities, things that give that extra little bit of flavor to what Wasaga, and it allows Wasaga to shine and say, hey, we've got a arts and crafts festival that you haven't seen before, you know, and we've got a jazz festival. We've got all those things, everything in this room that people have heard of, but it's going to be Wasaga flavor. So that's how we can achieve some of this, and those are the principles we're adhering to. This part here is easy. I think we all talked about this. This has been identified before. There is a spine to Wasaga's heritage here. It's called Main Street, and you know, end of Main is right on the beach. But we have a lot of other opportunity on Main between Moseley and River Road. And so we identified, as I mentioned, with our public meetings where people thought the center of town should be, and that was one of the mandates of the study. And we ended up with, you know, not a big surprise, Main plays the role of the backbone of the town, and its gateways have to be addressed. We have a gateway where it meets river, and we'll have another gateway in effect where you come into the touristy economic area of the beach. And then somewhere in the middle of that, lo and behold, is the heart. But the economic heart, or what we call the lungs of the town, is on beach. The importance of that is to consider that, you know, it's not far. It doesn't take long to get almost anywhere in downtown. Up to 10 minutes. You know, 7 minutes at best to Stonebridge from this downtown core. Maybe 11 or so minutes from the very beachfront back to Stonebridge. So it's a very walkable community. It can be very walkable. We're stuck with cars, and we all talk about parking and traffic jams here on the crazy weekends. But this can be and should be a walkable community. That's also one of those sustainable community, green community things that we need to think about for the urban fabric of this community going forward. This study, of course, is not looking at all of that, but once I wanted to highlight for you that if I'm staying in a cottage over here, it's quite walkable. If I'm even over here, it's quite walkable. And if I live and work and play in the downtown, that's all very walkable. So this is, you have the great fortune of having a not a difficult city or town to get around in. Yes, the weather's a problem in the winter, and yes, we have seasonality, but when the opportunity for the town to really pulse comes along in the best times of the year, this is a very walkable place. Somehow we fell into the trap of everyone having to get in the car to go somewhere. And these are the two precincts, the downtown core on the what we call the lower mainland, and then we have the beach, beach 2, beach 1 and 2 area on the beach itself. So our focus for implementation of a master plan has been in these two areas. The first was on Lower Main to create a community focus or a hub for business and civic activity, and one on the beach, which is for residents and tourists to enjoy the beach and maximize the economic potential of it to generate tax dollars for this community. The flanking areas, the supporting neighborhoods, the opportunities for those neighborhoods to become part of this larger plan hasn't even been investigated yet, hasn't been studied yet. There's so much more to do to think about how all those parcels play a role here. But their close proximity is a valuable asset. No one's very far from where the action could be. And there is even we've understood that there's some future development nodes. That distance is a 10-minute walk from most of any of the core areas where this activity would be. So it's really a very nice. It's a little more fragmented than a lot of downtowns are, but we'll have to blame the Wasaga River on that, and whoever created that. So what are the building blocks of a great community? And you all know this. You don't need us to tell you this, but I'll refresh your memories. Great streets, great parks and open space, buildings that reflect the culture and the history and the business activity, the vibrancy of downtowns, and then some anchors to remind people. I don't know why. Oh, you know why? Because it's not. Each one of those should flip to another image. But anchors, things that are traffic generators. That's what we mean by anchor. Things that make people want to come down there again and again. The events that we're going to put on in Town Square are traffic generators. They create people's interest. They get people to come back over and over again when instead of just being, it's just not just the Christmas festival. It should be all the time. And those anchors can be programmed events and outdoor things. They can also be traffic generators like civic function, like libraries, the arenas where there's constant programs going on, and also anchors that support the plan. So that if I say have an event going on and it's booked for July first weekend, we have a horrible rain projected, we've got places where we can get people out of the weather and into our secondary choice, but still give them options, so we don't have to say we're closed, sorry, closed due to rain. So those anchors also have to contribute to that, to multi-purpose, multifunctional space. And it's a different way of thinking of the civic space that you can create now. It's not just singular use, it's multiple purpose. And those anchors are a big part of that. So when we considered the plan, this is Lower Main, and I'll let Fran jump in a sec here, but these numbers are pretty straightforward. In this is the heart of where we want to start and catalyze development on this section of Lower Main. At that major intersection, what should and could be a very powerful intersection off of 92, coming into a traffic calming device like a town roundabout, which is also a great place for an iconic identity piece for I have arrived, you are now in the center of town. And then these beautiful streets and street frontages lined with businesses and other uses that support the nature and the flavor and the character of Wasaga in this area. So in doing that, we have a town square, we have what we call anchor developments that populate big pieces of real estate that create activity and create development potential, even residential and mixed use and commercial and entertainment, all in this neighborhood. There's community hubs. In this case, we're illustrating what a multiplex mixed use arena could do. These could be other kinds of anchor or community hubs, but that would be a classic example of a big anchor, something that drives people and the residents, not just the tourists, but the residents. This is where you come year-round to take your kids to play hockey, watch hockey, learn to skate, come in here and see a fair, an indoor event and festival, library. All those sorts of social space could be in and around Maine and still be adaptable to the summer months when we have more tourists here. The roundabouts, as I mentioned, lots of on-street parking, make it easy for people to park, get in. It gets that kind of gritty feeling again where it's not sanitized, where I can't find a place to park my car. I don't even know if there's one that exists. And it adds again to slowing down people and getting them to smell the roses and the coffee on Main Street. And finally, the public space, those very important catalysts to making this a community center for a community at large. And then, Fran, you want to just talk a little bit about the potential?
Sure. So this is where we start marrying, well, we've done this all along, but you're marrying here the market potential with the plan. So in terms of what we're talking about in this lower Main area, the GFA, the gross floor area, is in the realm of about 76,000 square meters. I still think square feet, but just
That's
multiply.
over 800,000 for those of us who...
That's right. So we're talking about residential units in the realm of about 560. Now that's the full build out, and the full build out is in, we're talking 10, 15, 20 years, but the catalyst phase, or the phase one, if you will, we're talking about 220 residential units. That would bring in a population of about 365 residents. And then you have in your full build-out phase, 556 of these, population of about 900 residents. And your target in terms of the Ontario Growth Plan is trying to do at least 50% of those total residents in terms of jobs. But realizing here that in Wasaga we have a large retirement community, our target here on the jobs is more in the realm of 300 to 400, so a little less than the 50% target.
Oops. On the beach, it's a little different story. We have two areas that are related to commercial. First one we're describing as the beach square, and a lot of you have seen it, but I'll show you what it is. And then there's that entertainment zone. The things that, some of the things that we've lost over the years, harken back to this sort of feeling and vibrancy. There has to be a place for that. But you can't, if you just line the beach with resort hotels and said, well, there you go, that's it. Well, the guests in that resort hotel will be having a great time, but where do the rest of the people play? What do they do when they're here other than playing in the sand and the water? And the beach square is a reflection on the end of Maine, the desire for town to have another hub during the peak summer seasons and into the shoulder months, and also to be year-round. We try not to make something that is strictly seasonal, strictly a 3-month experience, but can we get a nice compressed area where you can still have businesses that can thrive here year-round and contribute to the big push of demand for entertainment and restaurants and family fun when the peak season is on and they're looking for entertainment. So that goes hand in hand, however, with resort development. And we look at what the private sector is going to be looking for if they become partners with you. They're looking to capitalize on revenue from this, share in the costs of that, and this offsets the costs that are borne in some of these areas. In other words, the economic model only works when you have all of this happening. To find somebody who's going to come in and do this all by themselves, and realizing that it is more seasonal than you'd like it to be, they're going to struggle, and it'll take a long, long time for that to grow on its own. And then it's all pulled together by the beachfront and the boardwalk and people who are traveling up and down the beach, all the way from Beach 4 all the way up to the mouth of the river. And this is the address for the tourists who are walking the beach. So what's in it? Festival Square, which I mentioned, which is our commercial zone for the beach. It's lined by commercial on the ground floors. There's residential and hotel on the upper floors. Fran can talk a little bit about that product. Mark will also speak to it. And that's our year-round hub of activity at the end of May. In between, I kind of already said, that's our entertainment precinct, and we'll see all kinds of entertainment in here that could range from miniature golf to rides to the stuff that used to be here, or some of the stuff that used to be here, but the things that people are looking for when they're out looking for family fun on a great summer day. Possibility of a large indoor water complex, certainly outdoor water play for the better seasons, and a variety of other activities in here that support that in terms of food and beverage and a bit of merchandise to make a complete tourist experience. And then to the far end here, of course, residential resort type, and that's more of an ownership term. It's really a resort-like beach villa environment, and we need to start to get a better product in Wasaga to reflect the opportunity or the demand for some of this type of product. We see this already happening across the bay. They're at the bottom of a ski slope. You're at the edge of a great lake, and it's the same kind of product. People want to be close to those major assets and those major amenities. So,
The larger GFA,
yeah.
124,000. We were at, on the other side, about 76,000 in terms of GFA. And the residential units here, we're talking about 1,200 units, which would reflect a population of 1,700. Again, this is full build-out numbers. Retail units in the realm of about 80. Hotels on the far side over here, we have 80-room boutique hotel that's in the catalyst stage. On this end is the water park hotel, which is more long range in scope, and that's at 250 rooms. And then with that population of 1,700, the job creation is in the realm of 800 to 900 jobs.
So I think you've seen these in the press and on your website. So that's an image of what we could imagine being a wonderfully busy day in Wasaga Beach, on the beach. So the zone that we're focusing on are these two. And the potential economic impact is important to understand, because this is what's going to get people excited. This is what's going to get the province. Yeah, they're big numbers. We should have printed them bigger. Yeah.
So what this is two looks at the economic impacts. First is your build. So this is the capital investment, and we've segmented it. There we go. So these numbers here are on the capital side, then I'll get into these numbers. But if we look at the catalyst phase in the first sort of 5 to 10 years, the full build-out, when we look at everything in itself, we're in the range of plus or minus $625 million. So I think Andrew mentioned at the beginning the investment at Blue. That was in the realm of $950 million, so not as big, but certainly significant numbers. And so when we look at the catalyst phase, we're talking about $200 million. This is both on both the town square side and on the beach side for the residential, the retail, the boutique hotel, etc. So that investment in itself, and I'm only talking here about what this means to Simcoe County, okay? There's numbers overall for the province, but in terms of the $200 million spend on capital will generate GDP for Simcoe County of about 66 million, okay? And then that translates into labor income and jobs. So the number of jobs created by the build is about 600 jobs, and then taxes are in the realm of about 29 million. That's federal, provincial, municipal type of taxes. And most of those taxes have to do with your income. So it's and also supplies and goods and so on that you're purchasing. But these don't reflect the property taxes of those residential units that you're actually building and will be generating income for the town itself. It's really about the amount of earning power and so on, and goods and services that are purchased as you go along. So the full build out, here we're talking about $625 million. The full build out then will generate about 1,300 jobs, but that's over 20 plus years as you step through the overall process. Then we looked at incremental new visitor spending created because of the development. And here's where we had to look at what's the profile of your visitor today and how are we going to change that profile. So right now, today you had a really good summer, and looking at the way you count tourists in Wasaga, and I had trouble with this, but I got clarification by the folks at the park. But basically, the way our best estimate is how many cars are being parked by at the provincial park itself, and then how many people in those cars, 4 people per car. And then they've done aerial photographs to say for every person in a car, there's another 5 people on the beach. That's everybody else also, and parking elsewhere and so on. So we backed into number of numbers to clarify that and looked at all the parking revenues and so on. So right now, today, you have about, in the realm of about 1.7, 1.8 million visitors coming to Wasaga. Now, the makeup of those visitors, though, are 19% of them are staying overnight. And when I say staying overnight, that's in the campgrounds, that's in the cottage cabin units, and that's also in your seasonal residential homes, okay? And then you have the balance of them, most of them, 80%, that are coming in, going out.
Day trippers.
Day trippers, in, out, and use your facilities and whatnot. So with this plan, what we'll see is the ability now to see more overnight tourists. More overnight tourists means more spending. So we looked at where are we today in terms of our visitor makeup and what's kind of the spending on that. So right now, what's an overnight visitor is spending about $163 per person on a trip. A same-day visitor spending $72. So when we inflate that up and then we look at the incremental amount of tourists that will be coming, and some of them will be transitioning from staying in cottage cabins to this new type of product, and a lot more will be actually induced to come into your marketplace because now we have a product that they're going to be interested in, and we're also going to be able to convert some of those same-day visitors to overnight visitors because we have a product and something for them to stay and do and so on through the experience. So in that catalyst period, we're talking about incrementally building another 200,000 visitors. Once you add on the full program itself, with the water park, everything, the incremental number of visitors are 500,000. But really, the difference is how many are going to be now staying overnight, and that's where you're going to get your better spend as opposed to just coming in for the day. So in the, as I said, the first fit, right now, you're 19% of them are overnight. With the completion of phase one, the Catalyst program, 24% of them will stay overnight, 76% will be same day. By the time you get to full build out, you're at 27% staying overnight and 73% of them on a same day pattern. So with that incremental spend and the incremental overnights, that then will generate another incremental $34 million to your spending, which will create 50 million in GDP and another 260 jobs, direct taxes in the realm of about 7 million. That's on your catalyst, and then you go up from there. And these are, when I say this, these are annual impacts. So these are dollars being spent every year. So at 500,000 more visitors to the community, that's another $90 million in incremental new money to the community, 36 million to Simcoe County's GDP, 24 million of that is labor, 660 jobs, 17 million in taxes. I don't do the behind the scenes in terms of the economic impact model. I leave that to the province, but the due diligence is done in terms of the inputs that go into that model and how you calculate those inputs.
I just wanted to add one point
Yeah.
here. Comparing with the Village at Blue. Village at Blue, before the village was built, so the ski hills, 728,000 tourists went there. Within the build, the immediate build, they gained 500,000, same as we're projecting here. They're now at 2.5 million. That's what that village did for Collingwood. When you factor in all the additional spending, that's the potential we're talking about here.
Chair.
Yeah.
Brian? I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead, Councillor.
In looking at the economic impact, I'm assuming this is very focused on the development. So if we said the development was also responsible for building momentum for boomers out of the GTA to reside in Wasaga Beach as their place to live through retirement, then all of that additional economic impact would be over and above what you're discussing here.
This is, yes, you're correct, because this is incremental new visitor spending, not residential spending.
Right. So
That's correct.
But certainly this would appeal to many people to be in and around this type of development.
That's right.
So,
Sorry, Council, what I'd like to do is hold questions to the end if we
it
can.
might be easier, because I think we might answer some of the questions along the way. So implementation, that's what we're here now to, this is sort of the key, yeah, I guess you can say goodbye. And Mark will take your place. Implementation is about where do we go from here? You know, we sort of now have a picture of what it could look like, where it's going to sit, what it generally might, you know, how it might land on the ground and look like from the air. And we have, you know, street views of what, you know, idyllic places that we'd like to say is home for this community. But then, what's the plan to get there? So the implementation, the purpose of this is, of course, I mean, it's easy to read here. We're trying to get the official plan in place. This package is to guide the official plan so that it now reflects what the goals of the community are. We need to set design guidelines, which has not been done yet. Design guidelines of what it's going to look and feel like. You know, things that is by and large yet to be done. Codes and bylaws is another thing. Height restrictions, we have certain parts of the community of the study area that's already there, it's ready to go. It's mostly the beach area, but the rest of Maine is not ready for this vision and needs to have some work done. And then on the overall, there's you know, other codes that, you know, as a municipality and as, you know, people who live in this community have interest in what are we really saying here about the kind of community we want, and our codes and bylaws help to govern that. The build part of it is what's it going to take to do this, what does the phasing look like, what is happening in all of these areas, and build for the municipality is largely those four zones. It's the public realm that we refer to as, streets, open space, and civic space. And what other public realm do we have, like, facilities that we could bring into the picture? I mentioned earlier we're using the arena as an example. Is that in the public realm? And it's in the public realm. Does it make sense that it goes here? Or some other things like that would be a very key ingredient to building out this vision. And the mayor doesn't like it when I use the word vision, but because we have a plan. But the plan, it does. Everyone used an imagination. When they came and talked to us about what they could see here and imagine being here, they were using a little vision up here in their head. So it does reflect it, but yes, it is a plan. And finally, how do you manage this? How do you deliver it? And those are some of the tools that we have beyond what the municipality does. We have business improvement areas. There are landlords and management boards and programming people who all make a contribution to what we deliver in the end. And all of that is stitched together in partnership. No one is going alone on this anymore. It's really hard to do this on your own. Even if Daddy Warbucks came and decided, I'm going to take over the entire town, he needs you as a partner to make it happen. He can't do this on his own. And we've seen what happens when that connection isn't made as strongly as it could have been. So that's an important ingredient. So Lower Main, our first phase is to control, to catalyze in the areas that we do control, which is the streets, and some of the land is owned by the municipality already, and see if we can bring in one of those anchors, one of those public realm facilities that could help us to drive a new type of traffic into the downtown area, and then also stimulate a key building, which is not necessarily this one, but it makes a lot of sense. It would be attached to a civic square, because then you start to get the key ingredients. It's that critical mass I was talking about, what it takes to get things starting to, where people can drive into town from Godridge and go, I get it. I see what they're trying to do here. Because if you don't have enough of the key ingredients, it doesn't make sense, and it's harder for people to jump on the bandwagon. So there, I'm sorry, this is sort of taking you through the same things I just said. On the main end, the beach and the boardwalk, or the beach boardwalk, is a critical connector. Festival Square is a very critical public space, much like the town square is on the Lower Main area. And then the flanking commercial with hotel, the first of the hotel new product, and some residential, and of course restaurants and entertainment that can flex their muscles, get bigger in the summer months, and pull back down to being what is essentially an operation in the shoulder months. So over to Mark.
So this is where Steve puts his crayons away. and the really hard work starts.
The real work.
And it is, because this is what we do for a living, but this is where a lot of the transfer goes to council. And if council decides to move forward with this, I am here to tell you that the heavy lifting will begin now. But you are in the very, very fortunate position of making the extraordinarily wise decision of acquiring this land. And that puts you in a heck of a strong place as you start down this pathway. I work for municipalities all over this country doing very similar things. If you go, if you know anyone at the city of Stratford right now, they're in a very similar position. Different context, but a tourism town struggling. They're building a town square. They're actually building theirs right now, so they're a bit ahead of you. But owning land is a huge advantage, and that gets you in the position not only capturing the financial benefits associated with this property, but the public benefits as well. You can weigh those in council before it even gets to your partners. And the work plan ahead of you is structured based on me doing this for a long, long time. And one of the first things I learned a long time ago is we're all heading towards creating some sort of partnership, whether we get into a relationship with a developer or a senior level of government. But before you do that, the way you manage that is you understand your position very clearly at the beginning. You want to understand your costs, and you want to understand your benefits. So Fran's given you a really good sense of where the benefits are. We don't really, well, we have an idea what the costs are, but we need to work on that a little bit. So part of the work plan right now is to take the work that Steve's done with the greatest respect, but drill it down to a more fine-grained
Sharper
level.
pencils.
Sharper pencil. No crayons, pencil. And start to really identify those initial projects. We think that the town square is the first project. We believe that strongly. There's lots of evidence out there that town squares have become a real economic driver to revitalization of the town. But what is that town square? What quality of planning, what quality of landscaping is it? And those are questions we need to talk about and discuss. And part of that is that third bullet is reducing the uncertainties, because we may be in a position that this time next year in negotiations with the developer, and what we'd really like to do is have that developer build the park for us. But the first thing the developer is going to say to us is, okay, what kind of park? What are the finishes? How many trees? We want to be able to tell him before that process starts. So we're not negotiating with him on the design of the park later. We know what we want now. We don't do that with the private sector. We do that up front between ourselves. And all that does is lead to a very efficient use of very limited public dollars. And when I say public dollars, I mean dollars that developers might give us to do things. We still want to be wise in how we use that and be strategic. And there's some places that will maybe better placed. And that's the sort of discussion that the work plan I'm going to talk about takes us through for the next 12 to 36 months. So this is my Gantt chart, which basically really schematically shows some of the big work items over the next 3 years. But really, what I'm trying to do is get you in your mind's eye how you get to that first project, first couple of projects even, in the first 24 months under construction. So I'm going to go through each of these at a little bit level. So in the first, this is the first project. You'll see that bar chart's on the right, and it's colored in red. Of course, I can't see it, so I'm sure you can't either. But the first thing we need to do is engage some engineers and park designers to start looking at the plan and start picking it apart in a little bit more detail. We want to know how big exactly that park is. We want to know, we want them to give us options on what that park might look like and what they might cost, so we can choose. And we have to acquire some lands. We need to know exactly how much. We want to know what that might be. Some lands we may not need now, maybe some lands we need in the future, maybe some we don't need at all. There's a question of what might trigger an environmental assessment. There's a ways of managing that, but we need to understand what pieces of this work might require an environmental assessment. So there's some roads we want to build. Sometimes that can trigger a provincial process. It takes a bit more time. We want to learn what that requires, and if there's a way we can work within that and still keep our project going. And by understanding what these costs are, how big the streets are, what the street might look like, even things that are underground, we don't exactly know. We may have to move some services. We may have to move a water pipe or a sewer someplace. We want to know exactly where those are, how much that might cost, and that'll help us with our funding and financing strategies, particularly as we get into negotiations with a developer. Again, understanding our costs and issues in terms of developing the plan. And from that, we can start refining a phasing plan. We may discover there's a really expensive piece of work in here that maybe we can't afford to do or we can't expect the developer to do, but maybe it's part of another capital budget item in terms of resurfacing a road. So, hey, why don't we wait later, do that, build that into the budget and phase that at a later stage. So maybe there's another way of doing it within the municipal financing plan. So that's a big piece of work that could start immediately. Another big piece of work that you've already started, I think, is your official plan update. And Steve already pointed to this. Your plan is outdated. It's outdated for a bunch of other reasons, and there's a need to revisit it. But there's a need to revisit it to bring this downtown plan into the policy world. And so there's lots of big policy issues that you'll want to discuss as part of that work. And in doing that, that will help lay the groundwork for guiding investments. There's an issue like in your downtown plan, you may say buildings could be no more than 4 stories. That's an important thing for you to discuss before that goes to the development committee. You don't want the developer out there telling you how big your buildings are. You as a community want to make that decision now. And you also have a community improvement plan that's been sitting in the background. You spend some time and money on that. That's ready to go. But there's some things you might want to tune up in that. One of the things is, do you want to consider incentives in some of this place to accelerate development? So in Kitchener, in Waterloo, in Guelph, in Hamilton, they've all given development charge waivers and other financial incentives for a very short period of time just to get some development happening. And so they're rewarding developers who come to their municipality and invest early. Not after 5 years. In Brampton, they did it for 5 years. They got 5 condos and they shut it down. So, and that's been really helpful in getting their downtown moving along. So that's something that's going to come up and be in front of council very soon, I expect. Again, at the same time, while you're doing all this work, you should be out there engaging with developers now. You should be having informal discussions with people that might be interested in investing to get their input. You never want to do this in complete isolation. You want to know if you're kind of on track. And as you accumulate this information, you'll have more and more to test with them. And we call these market soundings. And one of the issues might be if we put some of the beach land out to the market, how much beach land? Is 1 acre enough, or would they need 5 acres? Like, those are things we want to ask them. We're not going to do what they say, but it sure is good to know what they're thinking, and that helps guide any formal process for soliciting development partnerships in the end. And it's a very normal and accepted practice in Ontario right now, and we do many of these.
This is an important piece. You're not experts on this. There's other people who are. You need to start to understand what they're looking for so that you don't have mismatched expectations when you finally do have something you're ready to offer. And that's no one expects you to know this. So that's how you sound it, and they know that's why you're there. And so the more you do that in advance, the better prepared you are for the challenge ahead.
So all these pieces of work are working together, and you're talking amongst another, and every piece is informing. This would probably help you inform your policy direction, and it might inform what the park design is looking like. The other big decision is, how do you dispose of land? We call this a disposition strategy. Really topical discussion with Ontario municipalities right now. Ontario municipalities are starting, when they're cash strapped, everybody's trying to get as much value out of their real estate as possible. And two, frankly, smarter. And they're thinking like developers in a lot of respects. And so, it used to be a municipality had a piece of land, you put it for public tender, and the highest person got the bid, and they go and rezone it, add a bunch of value, and they make a lot of money. What municipalities are now trying to do, we're just finishing with the town of Oakville, is take that land a little bit further along in the process and get it rezoned and think a little bit more like the developers, to the extent where municipalities are even joint venturing with developers. So we just struck an arrangement between the City of Toronto and Tridel for a tower in downtown Toronto, which will generate, land value was $8 million to start off with. This is going to generate about $40 million to the City of Toronto. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen here, but what I'm saying is there are other ways of looking at how to leverage your land value to get more out of it than just selling it. And that may be as simple as saying to the developer, I want you to buy the land, but we also want you to build Festival Square, and we want you to build it so it looks exactly like our engineers told us in the study we did in January. So there's the other issue about, you may want to think about creating a separate little corporation called the Municipal Development Corporation. The Municipal Act provides for this, and in Guelph, Ottawa, Toronto, of course, Hamilton, they've all established little municipal development corporations, and really these development corporations are little 1 or 2 person operations that form a buffer between council and the development community. And there's a lot of reasons why you do this, but the biggest reason you do this is because with the greatest respect to council, developers don't like doing deals with municipal councils. And the reason for that is the speed of decision-making. And the second reason is that they feel like they're very private, they're typically very private companies, and they like to keep it that way. And when they deal in a public forum, they realize that at least there's a sense that may not be the case. So Municipal Development Corporation is a way of council giving a corporation strict operating rules and strict negotiating rules, but within that, they can do deals. And so that speeds up the process, it makes it more business friendly and investment friendly. And that's something, that's a process of, that you may want to go through to think if that's for the municipality or not. And now, with all this work, you're getting down to your first phase 1 plan. That could be as big as Steve said, maybe the park, maybe a small condo building with retail to building, and even a hockey rink, or a community hub of some nature. That could be a big phase 1. Phase 1 could just be the park. It doesn't matter. The point is, you make something that makes sense, get it going, get something started, and send a signal out to the community that the plan's for real. But this plan will be very detailed. It'll know exactly the steps we have to take. It'll have identification of the land required. It'll identify what the costs are, how much servicing we have to do, what kind of trees we're going to put into this park, whether it's hard surface or soft surfaces, and a deal structure so that we know when we're going to the market, this is kind of what we expect, and we know it, and we've managed our own expectations of how we're going to work with the private sector. And through all this, there may be all sorts of different little severances are required, or land consolidations. This is identified as a separate item just because these can get complicated and messy, and you need to understand this as soon as possible. So if you have a phase 1, developer partner, say you have a block set aside next to the park and you want them to build a 4-story condominium or a rental building or an office building, they're not going to want to be involved in creating a road. You want to know how that's going to be done and figure out a way that they know that the road's going to be in place when they're there. So that may be part of it. And there'll be an abundance of agreements that you'll be wading into. So you should start thinking about what these agreements might look like. You won't have the agreements in place, but there are some key issues that you may want to consider. For example, I keep using the public square or the festival park notion, but you may want the developer to build that park, and the developer might say, I'm going to build a park, but I also want to own it. And you might say, okay, we don't mind if you own it, but we want to know that that park is always open to the public. And so that sets up all kinds of legal agreements about who goes on the land, who maintains, who's liable if somebody trips on the pavement. You know, I know from experience that these are the things that kind of trip up a process like this at the end, and what we're suggesting is start thinking about how these agreements might work for you even before you get to an RFP stage, so that you're ready to know what you might give in and what you might not give in. So you're not doing it at a negotiating table and at a disadvantage later on. Finally, with all that, you get down to the meat of this, and you're building up a bid package. All this material typically would flow into a bid package of some nature, and so that when the developer gets it, they have we've identified all those things at the beginning that I talked about. We've reduced our uncertainty and their uncertainty by telling them this is exactly what we want from you, and they have a really clear view of how to bid this and what the financial package is going to look like from them to you. You'll have some key decisions to make. How do you want to market this? Do you want to go, and that'll depend on how big the offering is. So say it's, I don't know, being a bit facetious, but say it's 4 acres of land on the beach, you might say, this probably should go out internationally, and let's see what the world offers. If it's a smaller piece, maybe it's a bit of a smaller offering. You'll build a website. All of this is done on the web now. We just concluded a project on the Oakville or Mississauga waterfront. Everything was done on the web. There's no brochures anymore. You just, anyone from around the world just clicks on stuff. And you'll need to establish clear protocol for communications and fairness. And again, all that has to be done in that before we release the bid package. importantly, establish evaluation scoring criteria. That tends to be a really tricky piece of work, and you have to do that well in advance of releasing of any RFP. So that's a lot, but an intro to some of the big issues. I think one thing, the other thing too that was on that chart that I didn't talk about is there are things, I think, Andrew, we can do now on the beach, aren't there? And we shouldn't be waiting to do any of this heavy lifting. We should be thinking about the land that we have on the beach and interim uses we can put down there. We've done a great job this summer with those concessions. And there's no reason why you can do more of that while all of this is percolating along for the next 3 or 4 years, just to, even if it was just maps of this showing, here's what's coming, folks, and you should be really excited and enthusiastic about it. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
We can keep going.
Well, I have a few more slides, so I'm wondering, all right. So we'll open the table here for questions from council. Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When is the final report expected that council will have a hard copy in hand?
We'll target February
We have draft now, right? So
Okay.
once we get council's comments and this committee's comments, then we incorporate those.
and I will make sure that that is to all members of council at least a week in advance. If we have it earlier, we'll be sure to get that out as soon as possible.
So do we have draft now to submit to or to circulate to council?
Not yet. We have a draft. We wanted to get feedback today, and then we'll finalize the draft report, and then we can circulate
So
that.
we'll finalize the draft
Yes.
Right.
circulate that to
Get
council
your draft
with as
comments.
much, and give council as much time as possible. Okay. Go ahead, yes.
And I'm glad to hear that because I think the slides are great, but without the actual report, it's really hard for council members to give you input. So I look forward to getting that. For clarification, so the design guidelines and the market sounding and all of that, is that part of this contract or will that be something else separate?
You'll be going out for that. That's
Okay,
not part
so
of it.
that's,
So,
okay.
so to be clear, put money in the budget, council approved the budget for 2017. We'll have to discuss how we undertake all of that work, and I'll come back with the final report. I'll outline next steps and how we would proceed with some of that work that's been talked about today.
Okay, there was another comment about the Development Corporation that it would be a 1 to 2 member team.
For example.
So when we talk, because we've talked about development corporations before, so it's that small of a group, is that
It
correct?
can be anything you want, but I didn't want, some people think, oh, development corporation, another layer of government. They can be very, very light, but they can be very large too. It's completely within council's prerogative, but they need not be a financial burden to the town. They can be staffed by part-time people, often are, and brought out as they're needed and then packed away when they're not. So it's just a tool.
Okay, and just my final one is just on the motion here, the way it reads, it says that staff be directed to review the consultant's recommendations and report back to committee of the whole. I just want to make sure that whatever report we get, council has the opportunity to comment on every single recommendation. I don't want to have a report and then staff brings back, half of those recommendations. I think we need to discuss every single one. So am I understanding that correctly?
It'll be a full body thorough report as to all the recommendations so that council can look at it.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from council? Councillor Smith?
Yes, I just wanted to clear up something because there's a lot of public misconception out there about money and how much this is costing. And when you were talking about the capital investment and the amount of dollars there, I think we need to be clearer to the public that it isn't all municipal money. It is developer money that will be used for this because a lot of people are under the impression that we are using the town money to do this. And somehow we need to make a very strong communication effort to say that, it may have a lot. Look at Blue. Blue had partners, I'm sure, with Interwest when they did their development, and that we expect, we've had help from the province already as far as the Forex study, it was completely paid for. by the province and private investors, and we just put a small amount in. We thought we might have to put more in. So as we go forward, I'm hoping that we can still work with the province and their, I don't know if the industry area is still working, and see if there's more funding as we go forward for this project. And I'm very excited. I think it's great. I can visualize something down there. So, I think you're doing a great job.
Any questions or comments from council? Councilor Ego?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd just like to say that I don't know if everybody noticed, but on television lately about the talk about Midland and Collingwood, and now I just hear about Stratford, about how they're spending all this money on redoing their downtowns and updating their downtowns, especially Midland. The other night was on TV about $12 to $15 million to redo their main street. Collingwood's talking about redoing their park, water park, which is in the millions of dollars. Now hear about Stratford. It seems that I think that we're on the right track here, and I think that other towns are realizing the advantages of having their main street, and we're very fortunate to have not only a main street, but we also are fortunate to have a beach that coincides with it both. And as I said before, I think any town would give their right arm to be able to have both. And we're very fortunate, and we have a pearl, as far as I'm concerned, in Ontario with our beach. And I think that this is probably one of the most exciting things that has happened to Wasaga Beach in years. And I look forward to it. I don't know if I'll ever be around to see the end of it, but I'll tell you one thing, I'm excited to see it started. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Belanger?
Well, I just want to add to Ron's comment too. I think it's also a unique opportunity that our reserve and recreational area is in such close proximity to this development. That is very rare within communities. Like, I mean, we're literally 300 yards because of the nature of our town and the M&R. And I mean, obviously there's some complexity to work through that. But we have seen that in many areas, that is another area that can make you much more for season. And a lot of what has hindered the development there is the rental and hotel type accommodation that's available to us today. And I think that speaks to that. We haven't talked a lot about it through the project because I think the focus is to maximize the economic benefit of the beachfront and those best months and some of the shoulder months. But I've talked to many people about Montebello, and they have a very strong winter season there, and it's a very similar situation, but their reserve and conservation area is in the middle of nowhere. It is 35 minutes from downhill skiing, but if they were, in 15 minutes and not even 5 minutes from Montreal, you can imagine what that would be like. So the potential is amazing.
Anyone else have a question or comment? Gentlemen, thank you. It is exciting times. We thank you for the excellent job you've done. Before I say goodbye, actually, our CAO has some questions. Sorry, George. So just back up and bring your crayons back.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of questions, if I may. One of the things that really excited me in going through the design process was the pedestrian-friendly nature of what was being discussed. And I know this is really high level, but you really didn't touch on that. Is that a next phase in terms of some of the detail, in terms of how the pedestrian movements are going to take place from this area down to the beachfront and around?
That's a good question, and that actually was a big part of the discussions in the early stage, not just brought up by our team, but brought up by the residents and stakeholders alike. And parking has always been a huge issue on busy days here, and traffic has always been seen as a bane to everybody's existence here, both residents and tourists. And getting the town to be more pedestrian friendly shouldn't be that difficult. There's a couple of things that need to be done. We talked with our traffic engineers or transportation engineers about another bridge. Where should the other bridge be, and should there be a footbridge that connects, creates a loop in this core area that so that people don't feel like they're walking out and back on the same stretch and repeating themselves, and those sorts of things. And in our business, as planners and designers, circulation is everything. Nobody, no retailer wants to be at the end of a dead end. Nobody in any commercial capacity wants to be at a dead end, and you want to optimize and maximize footfall. That's the commercial point of view. For the guests, it's the same thing. They don't want to be repeating themselves. They don't want to see things that they're not interested in. They want to see ugly parts of the trash bins. And so the way we move people through is critical to a great guest experience. And this town's not that hard to work with. There's a fabric here that can be worked with, and it's a few things that have to be added, there's no question. But going forward, one of the advantages you have in the ownership on the beach particularly is you have a relatively clean slate compared to other places. And so getting that mindset that we're going to control how people experience, and when they get there, that they get out of their car and they walk, we don't make them get back in the car to go somewhere. That's all part of that. We talked about it a lot, you're right, George, but we didn't. We can make this a lot longer meeting if you wanted.
So to George's point, in the final presentation, or the final, not the draft, but the draft
Report.
that will be included.
Yeah, it's referred to. I mean, we didn't drill down to pedestrian scale here. We talked about those principles, and they're in the principles of circulation and traffic. So yes.
George?
Just, thank you. The Stonebridge area was it's just outside the lower main, and I guess there was probably some decisions that had to be made, discussion, do we include it, do we not, do we include it? So I just want to understand the rationale for the Stonebridge area not being included as part of the lower main.
It goes back to who's got the most? It goes back to that slide where we talked about the distances between things. And what's really important, I think I described, we are a little bit bipolar here in what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to create an anchor that's the home and the heart of the community, but have another area that's an equal partner in effect, but has a different kind of, vibrancy, changes in season affect it more than this. But for those two things to thrive, they've got to be in close enough proximity that they feel integrated. And the further that moves away from this, the more tenuous that relationship gets. And so what we've said, and Andrew insisted that we draw an area that is longer than the catalyst areas. There we go. We know that it's from here to here. It's just gonna, if we start here, and Fran talks about the catalyst years, in the next 10 years, we probably aren't going to make it all the way down to Stonebridge, just because of the uptake on residential or commercial sales. It's just probably not. We're not starting with a clean slate. We have to build into the community, so it will take more time. The goal, however, is to have Main Street cover the full extent of Main Street with a gateway here, and we didn't talk a lot about the gateway at this end, but we know for the tourist that comes in on Mosley and is going through all of that to get here, he has to feel like he's arrived. And so it is important that Main Street be a fully, I think in the planning, we're allowing for that flexibility so that we can take from the middle of the Beck and Main intersection and let it grow in two directions. We know that this is probably a shorter length of time to grow, and this will take a little bit longer by virtue of the distance. But the intent is to let them grow.
Is it fair to say then that...
Excuse me, Council. The
Sorry?
CAO's not finished.
Oh, sorry. I had my hand up, but you weren't acknowledging me, so...
I don't know if the councillor has a question, a supplementary to that, because I have
Yes.
another.
You do? Oh, go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, I'm understanding that the incentives would be to close the gap between the heart and the lungs as quickly as possible, but if we have policies in place and a particular developer wanted to develop further up Main, then, so be it.
God
They
bless
would-
them. God bless them. We
Yeah.
want them to be part of it.
Right.
It's just we can't. We have to be we have to have a reasonable horizon on when that can be accomplished.
Well, it's to get
right?
that critical mass you
Yes.
keep talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Thank you. There was a slide there that talked about direct taxes, and I was just wondering if that's direct taxes annually, or is that, I think the figure was 77 million of it.
One of my economists is going to talk to this because I'm not a good.
I have, and I can't see the numbers. But I'll pull them up.
This one here, Fran?
Yeah.
Direct taxes at the bottom, that's what you mean, George?
Yeah, there was one that.
So on the capital side, the 29 million there we're talking about?
Direct, yeah, 29 million, yeah, and then there was a
And
77
77
million
at
over
full
on the
build-out?
part.
Yeah,
So
so
is
those are when you complete your full build of 625 million. So those are capital construction benefits to the various levels of taxes. So off of your income taxes and all of those kind of things. So they're one-time taxes. Once you've done your build-out, you don't benefit from those any longer. The ones on the bottom are annual. So those are the incremental new dollars being generated through taxes.
There's a divide
because they-
here, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
because of the new more tourists coming in. The additional leverages you're getting,
okay, thank you.
okay?
So just on that, while we have that slide up there, it says initial and then 5 to 10 years. So how do we interpret that?
Well,
Initial being this year and then 5 to 10 years from this year, or? how does
well,
it-
it all depends on the whole process Mark went
So
through.
that,
When we
remember
actually
he said that's
start
up
to
to 3
dig.
years, right?
That
Could
can
be up
take
to
a
3
number of
And
years.
the bigger the project, the more likely, the more lengthy the upfront phase is. You're not
Yeah.
ready to start next year. You know, so there's at least a good heavy year and a half to 2 years of some heavy lifting to be able to then be ready to go to the private sector and look for partners, go to the province and say, here's exactly what we want, you know, all of that, right?
Well, you could have a partner in a year, but it would still take him or her 24 months to build the building.
Yeah, and, you know, takes at least a year to 2 years to design, depending on how complicated the infrastructure needs are and so on. So there is an upfront phase where you're not gonna see any real change. And that's why I think it was great closing. Keep doing what you're doing. You know, keep showing people that you care, keep trying to stimulate interest and so on, and great little wins along the way, so people, you know, start to build support for what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's how after the presentation, that's how I interpreted it. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear that there's the initial, then there's all that background work that has to be done in that 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
And then we start at the 5 to 10.
That's correct.
So
That's right.
Councillor Belanger?
Yeah, just another question, like for the development world, like, I mean, obviously, they like to have a feeling of the level of support that the municipality is rendering to them, like, I mean, if you were to start a piece of this, like, say, the square or the roundabout at Main and Beck, and expedite that, would that not have a positive impact on how developers would view this? I know for our citizens, we've had years and years and years of, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and, this would be great. But I think we all want to see it go from a piece of paper to reality. And to get, I think, if we can get a small piece started, I think it's beneficial to our community and to attracting the development that we require. I just want to get an opinion on that.
The development community that's in Simcoe County or anywhere else in Ontario or Canada is no different than the residents of this community. Everybody wants to be a believer, and if you make a move first and show, if you get some senior government funding to build that roundabout, for example, and create the park, man, that's gonna be on page 2 of the Toronto Star and a lot of places like that, and that gets people.
Maybe.
But in your opinion, when you talk about the heavy work that's still to be done, is it realistic that work could be done and something like that could be underway in a little?
I would say it a little differently. We find that when somebody says to a developer or an investor, I'd like you to come and see the opportunity here, and why not invest, right? You get a much warmer reception from them when two things happen. You demonstrate you understand what their business is and what you're asking them to get involved in, right? And that's this study. is part of that. It's the front end, it's the pointed end of that exercise, is saying, I know what I need to do to get you interested, because I've looked into this industry and I understand the things that need to happen. And that's where your little TEDCO type of, your municipal development corporation can help communicate that message. The other part of it is, not only do I know what you need, I'm going to start by making something happen here first. I'm doing it at my risk. If there's some risk, that, and there'll be all the naysayers who say, well, they're going to build a white elephant because we really don't know if anyone's coming. No, it's showing that there is belief that this will work. And if you believe and demonstrate that, then others will follow, and they'll say, okay, they're serious.
You have to be prepared to invest in yourself before you can ask the private sector to come along and to take the full risk.
And just
So
as
you
a,
need to lead with that.
just as a side note, from my perspective, that's what I had an eye towards when we were preparing the budget the council recently approved. So some of those dollars were to be allocated towards detailed design work so that we can get construction ready for the following summer and you can pull the trigger on something. And that could be the roundabout, it could be some streetscape, it could be a civic square. All of this is subject to council approval, obviously, but that's where my head was at when I was preparing the budget request.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I do have a motion here I'll read, and then we'll take a 10-minute break. It is moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that the Downtown Wasaga Beach Development Master Plan presentation be referred back to staff, and further that the following receipt of the final report from the consultant team, staff be directed to review the consultant's recommendations and report back to Committee of the Whole with a final report for committee's consideration, as well as recommendations on next steps. Questions or comments? Councillor Belanger.
Yeah, do we have a timeline as to when we expect that to be done?
Andrew?
Targeting February, as soon as I have the final report in hand, I will notify the clerk and the CAO and we'll put that on the agenda.
Okay, but we don't know if it's 1st of February or 30th or 28th of February?
I can't commit to that
Okay,
today.
thank you.
All right, no other questions or comments? Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Worship. With the motion having been read, I'll ask the members of council to vote with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Eagle.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. We'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll resume. low, of course. And item number 5, new business, we've already done the downtown Wasaga Beach Development Master Plan. And we're going, if council has no issue, we're going to move item 5E, general liability insurance, up to the front here, so as that our treasurer can deal with that. Any concerns from council?
I'm so confused.
Madam Treasurer?
Thank you, Your Worship. So this evening I'm bringing forward the renewal proposal from BFL Canada, who's our general risk and insurance company. This is only our first renewal with them. We just contracted them back in 2016, at the beginning of 2016, after an RFP process. And from our perspective and other staff perspective, we are very happy with the service that we've received. We've continued to receive another very good renewal amount. I don't know if you recall, but back in 2016, what our renewal rates we're looking at were about $250 to $260 from our previous insurer. So we continue to see lower rates here from BFL. So there is a slight decrease from what we had predicted in the budget, and that's because we've gotten rid of some older vehicles that have been removed from the insurance listing. Property values they've left essentially at the same rate as previous year, where I had budgeted for them to increase a little bit higher. And the general liability did increase slightly, just by about 1.5%, which isn't really that bad. So overall, I think, it's a very good offer that we've received, and we've been very happy with the service, so I see no reason why we shouldn't continue with BFL.
Thank you, Monica. Questions or comments? Councillor Bray?
Just a question. In light of the health department's presentation the other night, they were talking about our very unique position of not only being the landlord, but being being the landlord of bars. And I'm wondering if our insurance company, if that affects the insurance, if that's something that we can kind of separate out. Are we adequately covered? I know the health department, there's nothing that they could provide for us. They went out and they asked different municipalities, and they basically said, well, you're unique. Leamington might have one, but, we don't really know. So I'm just wondering, does our insurance company know that? Because I know when I renew my corporate insurance, every year they ask you 10 million different questions, and depending on what you say, it changes quite dramatically, so.
If I may, Your Worship.
Please.
So we as well have a package about that thick of what we fill out for the insurance company, and it's quite lengthy. And certainly we do provide the information on the beachfront. Essentially what it comes down to is, does it increase our liability? Our rates haven't changed, so I would say they don't see it as that, but certainly it increases the property value that the town owns. When our tenants do rent the spaces, though, they do have to have a certificate of insurance and naming us as additionally insured. So when it comes to the, and I don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the alcohol establishments have to have a $5 million liability, and then clothing stores it would be, or that variety of stores would be about $2 million. So in terms of whether it impacts our liability, I can't really speak to that without the insurance company being here, but from my perspective, when I look at the rates, I would say no, it hasn't really. But certainly I could have the insurance company give us some feedback if that's something we'd like to.
I think that'd be good to ask the question and get the answer. That would be good,
Yep.
Monica. Councillor Eagle?
Yeah, just a quick question, I'm pretty sure it does, but this includes the fire department, doesn't it? All the vehicles in the fire department?
It includes all vehicles that the town owns,
Right,
yes,
thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Councillor Belanger?
Just an unrelated question. How many more meetings do we have you for, Monica?
I'm here until March 3rd, and then if George
so we
requires
have a
just some
couple
days
more.
after this.
Okay, very good. Just didn't want to miss an opportunity.
We're going to miss you.
Thank you.
All right, with no other questions or comments, it is moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Deputy Mayor by Foltz, to resolve the Committee of the Whole of Council recommends to Council that it authorize staff to accept the proposed renewal premium from BFL Canada for the provision of general insurance and risk management services at a fee of $237,924.84, inclusive of applicable taxes, effective February 1st, 2017, for a one-year term. Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. With the motion having been read, I'll ask the members of council to vote with an in favor or oppose. Councillor Belanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi? In favor. Councillor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Ego?
In favor?
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Counselor Stockwell?
In favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor?
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Moving on to corporate efficiency review, item 5B. Is this you, Mr. Cielo? It is.
Thank you, Worship, members of council. In your agenda package is a report entitled Corporate Efficiency Review, Organizational Changes. And I'm recommending that the town implement five organizational changes within the organization, and then a process in which to fill new positions within the organization. As council or committee is aware, we did have a consultant KPMG come in and do an efficiency review, and they identified a number of areas that that could be addressed both in a public report and in a confidential report. The subject matter tonight is two areas that were in the confidential report, and also dealing with some other organizational changes that I feel we could implement now that we had some staff changes or about to have some staff changes, and things that I think would make us more efficient as an organization. So the two recommendations coming out of the consultant's report were to retain fairness advisors for complicated or contentious procurements, and then realign responsibility for special events, tourism development, and property management. So those are the two areas. I'm just going to go through my report, Your Worship, if that's fine. I'll just hit the highlights. I think everybody's had an opportunity to go through it. The first recommendation is to transfer the Parks Division from the Parks, Facilities, and Recreation Department to the Public Works Department. The second recommendation is to consolidate special events within the Recreation, Events, and Facilities Department. Create a new working supervisor for special events position. New supervisory position for special events, I should say. And then create a new position of manager, property, fleet, and purchasing. So I'm just going to go through each of them, hit the highlights. Basically, the Parks Division is a three-person division right now, and they staff up in the summertime. They're primarily responsible for maintaining the parks, cutting the grass. They assist with special events. They staff up in the summer, hire a number of students, casuals and whatnot to maintain all the town's parks, assist with special events. They have a lot to do with that. In the wintertime, they staff down. They have three full-time staff overseen by a foreman. And one of those staff is the gardener, the other two responsible for clearing some of the town parking lots, the Recplex, the Chamber of Commerce parking lot, maintaining equipment, et cetera, et cetera. I'm recommending that division under the leadership of the foreman be transferred under Public Works, and the Public Works Department would consist then of the Roads Division, Water and Sewer, and the Parks Division. And I'm recommending this because I think that there's an opportunity for our operation to be more efficient. Right now, our Public Works crew is staffed basically for our winter operations, and then in the summertime, there's other projects called day labor projects that they take on, and it's basically a list that's generated through our Public Works Department in terms of small projects that our staff can undertake. We're getting through that list. A couple of years we haven't had that. We haven't had any projects, and the thought is that over time that we can start to move some of our Public Works staff into parks, and we won't have to hire as many park staff in the summertime. So try to be more efficient in terms of our utilization of our skilled staff. And in addition to that, in the winter operations, try to consolidate a little bit in terms of what cleaning our parking lots and that kind of thing. They've operated very separately for many years within the municipality. Parks, as I said, is led very capably by the foreman, and even with this, if council were to approve it, there's going to be a period of adjustment, and I'm looking at 2017 as that adjustment to see how we can implement efficiencies within the organization. So I think that 2017, we'll see some of that, and then in 2018, we'll have a year under our belt, and the two divisions will be working closely together that will see the full benefit of that. So I think that there's a good opportunity of making the efficient use of our skilled staff by merging the Parks Division with the Public Works Division. One of the recommendations, as I said, with the KPMG report, was to look at the consolidation of special events. Currently, special events, the community-based events are managed through the Recreation Parks and Facilities Department, and the tourism events are managed out of my office and through the assistant to the CAO and that role. The recommendation was that events be consolidated and then fall under economic development. I'm not recommending that to Committee of the Whole. I'm recommending that events be consolidated, but it form a division under the new the new Recreation Events and Facilities Department. I think there's an opportunity for that team to work closely together in terms of delivering events. I think it's in need of a supervision as a lead or a foreman type position, so I'm recommending that a new position be created similar to a working supervisor, similar to what we have in bylaw. So we'd have a working supervisor, we have our main event coordinator, we have our market and event coordinator, and then we have our assistant, and that would be a team that would work together organizing both community events and tourism-based events. And I think this team could function very effectively. I think the way events have been organized in the Recreation Department, it makes sense. Some of the more youth-oriented events, such as the Funderland and the Christmas tree lighting and whatnot, is organized by other staff in Recreation. I think there's an opportunity for them to continue to participate as well. Now, there's been some talk in terms of the future of the beachfront, in terms of what's happening with the beachfront and the special events taking place at the beachfront, in particular Festival Square and Playland. And I'll be bringing a report forward in February talking about a management board for the beachfront. And as part of that report, what I'll be talking about is that event staff dealing with events down at the beachfront not only would work within this unit, but they'd also have a relationship with this management board if council so decides to approve a management board for the beachfront. But my recommendation is that events be consolidated and come under the Recreation Events and Facilities Department. I touched a little bit about the supervisory role. I think that there is a need for a working supervisor within that function, and if we can look to establish that role, I think that'll give additional resources to plan events, seek out new events, bring those marquee events that council is certainly looking to see down at the beachfront and in the community. The next part of what I'm recommending is that council may recall that talked a little bit about property management services into the latter part of 2016, and I was recommending to bring property management services in-house. And in looking at property management services and then looking at some of the other things that we need as an organization, I thought that I could combine three functions and create one position, and it would be basically a manager of property purchasing and fleet. And we don't have a dedicated person now for purchasing. We don't have a dedicated person for managing the fleet. And we talked about bringing property management services in-house. And I think that we can combine those functions into one role and have one person fulfill that role. The purchasing right now is done by the various department heads under the purchasing bylaw, and it's done well. I think it's done well, but there are inconsistencies in terms of how we approach purchasing, in terms of how the RFPs are formatted, how the criteria in terms of the scoring. different things. So I think that this individual can assist and provide some uniformity in terms of how we approach our purchasing, our tender documents, that kind of thing. This person's not going to be preparing all of those, but they'll be there to assist and to ensure that we're following the purchasing policy as it's written. And I think that we're at a size now where I think we can support that in terms of having a purchasing officer. Some organizations larger than us have a dedicated person just responsible for purchasing, but I don't think we're at that size yet, but I think we're at the size where I think that can be combined with other functions to provide some uniformity, some consistency across the organization in terms of purchasing. With our fleet, we have 47 vehicles in the Public Works Department, and when you add all the other vehicles across the corporation, we have 78 vehicles, ranging from pickup trucks, plows, fire vehicles, buses. Right now, all those vehicles are managed by their individual departments. So Public Works manages their fleet, Parks and Facilities manages their fleet, Bylaw manages theirs, Building manages theirs. And the intent here is to consolidate that under the authority of one individual to manage the fleet. And by managing the fleet, it's just making sure that, the fleet's being maintained properly, that they're on a replacement schedule, they're properly being evaluated prior to replacing them, that we have a coordinated approach in terms of the replacement of the vehicles. So again, we're at a size now where, instead of having it individually managed by departments, the departments would still have their vehicles, but they would go to the manager of fleet and say, well, look, I've got a vehicle here that needs to be replaced, or it's had some issues, and the manager of fleet would look about transferring a vehicle maybe on a temporary basis over to them. So we'd have that kind of coordinated approach across our fleet. So it's not to take away the responsibility for, the various vehicles from the various departments. They have their needs, but the way I see it is that they would go to the manager of the fleet and say, look, I need a new vehicle, or I need this type of vehicle. Can you work with me in terms of creating the specs, creating the tender? We'll go out and get that kind of vehicle. And I think that type of approach, I think, will lead to a better use of our time in terms of our departments. They have now somebody that they can go to as an expert, and it'll be better management of our fleet. Some vehicles are very specialized, like the fire department vehicles are very, very specialized. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink here for a second. Thank you. So our fire department, they have quite a rigorous process in terms of how they spec their vehicles, the various equipment that goes on their vehicles. And this individual would be there as a resource to them, assist them in terms of that purchasing of those vehicles, assist in terms of the maintenance, deal with any kind of maintenance issues, that kind of thing. So I think that there's a benefit in that as well. And then the last part is with respect to, as I said, the property management component, dealing with the beachfront properties. As committee knows, we did have an outside property manager reported to me. I was quite involved in a lot of property issues over the last couple of years, probably more than I wanted to be, and I think by moving it in-house and then having somebody designated to do the property management functions, that the property can be managed in an effective way, but still leave me time to be doing other things which I think council is more interested in seeing me doing. So by combining these three areas, because the property management is basically a 5 to 7 months period, and the fleet and purchasing, I think we've got a full-time position in that we can fill. And I've looked through the organization, and I think there's an individual I think that can fit that role. That leads me to the next recommendation, and that's the implementation of this. As council is aware, we're having retirements, we're seeing people move on to other positions, and the HR coordinator and I have talked about some succession planning and preparing people for the next opportunity. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity to fill positions from within and give a give individuals an opportunity to demonstrate their abilities and skills. So these positions, the new positions that I'm proposing to fill on a 2-year basis, and then I would backfill those positions on a 2-year basis as well. I've asked for permission to do direct appointments because I think there's an opportunity. There's a couple of individuals in the organization, one in particular that I'm looking to make a direct appointment, and the others would be internal competitions. And again, to look to offer staff the opportunity to assume new roles and develop their skills in situations as to help the municipality prepare for our next generation of leaders in the organization. So I want to conclude by just talking a little bit about the financial piece. Council had set aside some money in the 2017 budget for the implementation of the KPMG report and the corporate initiatives budget. I'm proposing to use about $100,000 of that to fill the lead position for the special event supervisor. And then under the beachfront, we've allocated $50,000 for property management and $50,000 for building maintenance. I'm proposing to use a portion of that. And then with respect to the purchasing and the fleet components of that position, I'm proposing for 2017 that an administrative fee be attached to purchases in the capital budget to cover the cost of this individual. And then in 2018, we build it into the operating budget as part of just the cost within our corporation to pay for that position. So I don't see that there will be an impact on this role in 2017, but in 2018 there potentially would be an impact. But I think that the benefits of having good purchasing oversight and fleet management, I think will compensate for any additional costs. So, Your Worship, I'm going to wrap up at this point and answer any questions that members of the committee may have.
Thank you very much, George. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm all for efficiencies, but I just want to make sure, has department heads and staff members from each of these departments, were they part of this process? Was Denise part of coming up with this? It's easy for us to sit here and say this all sounds good, but I think we really need to be talking to the people who are out there doing jobs now. So did that occur?
Through Your Worship, yes. Denise was involved. I drafted this report. I take responsibility for the contents of the report, but Denise certainly provided input into the report. I met with the staff. I met with the park staff, the foreman and the staff out in the field at their office to talk about this. At that point, it was all proposed as it is tonight. I've met with individuals within the Public Works Department too. As you know, the Public Works Department is going through a little bit of a transition, but I've spoken to staff within the Public Works Department. I have not met directly with the events staff. Conversations have been had with the event staff. Jenny spoke with Angela, who was in today. The other event staff are aware. So staff are aware of what's being proposed. I can say that from what I get as the feedback, nobody has raised any flags to say, wait a second, that won't work. There's certainly been some refinements in terms of the understanding of the roles, but nobody at this point has raised a flag.
Okay, and just further to that, so I see we're moving monies around and things. We're taking, if I'm understanding this correctly, we're losing $20,000 off of our building maintenance for property management down at Beachfront. So I guess when we start taking off of things, I'm concerned that down the road, a couple of months from now, we're going to be asked for more money. And I guess, what is the overall effect in 2018 to the changes we're making here? It's fine to say we're doing it, a little bit this year and we're moving things around, but what is the ultimate effect?
I think that for 2017, for the special event supervisor, the dollars that have been shown here are full year's dollars. So they won't carry forward. They'll carry forward, but there won't be an incremental impact. Mm-hmm. For 2018, there will be an impact, and the position of the new position of property manager, fleet, and insurance or not insurance, but purchasing, would probably be around a $60,000 to $70,000 impact, because those dollars in 2018 would have to be picked up in the budget somehow.
Okay, and these are all contract things moving forward, or just the one that I saw?
The positions are all 2-year contracts, so what I'm anticipating, Madam Deputy Mayor, is that people will move into those positions for 2 years, and then there'll be people below them that will move for 2, and then below, so there'll be a little bit of a ripple, but everybody will be kind of on a two-year term.
But if we're finding this scenario doesn't work, it is a 2-year contract that can be changed down the road. Is that?
Yeah, so that's what I've said to the individuals impacted, because they're moving into roles, they will have the ability to move back into those roles if those things don't work out.
Okay.
The structural changes that I'm recommending, for example, moving parks over to Public Works, that's a permanent change. That's not a 2-year.
Permanent, I'm hoping though that with a review, like we're saying we're moving it over permanent, but I would hope that at some point we're going to have feedback to make sure that that new situation is working.
Yeah, yes, that's a good point, and certainly, as I said, in the first year, it's going to take some time to fully implement, so I think we need a year to really undertake any kind of review, but certainly, I'd be watching very closely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Ray?
Thank you. First question, what I read through was, are we still recruiting to replace the Director of Public Works and the Director of Parks, Facilities and Recreation?
Yes, we are. I've been holding off finalizing the advertisements until council has dealt with this.
Okay, so those positions will remain on the org chart, we're adding 2 new ones.
Correct.
Okay, so then my comments on that would be, so the property purchasing and fleet, I think if the property is spending 5 to 7 months of the year working on the beachfront, then I would question the need for the management board. I know we haven't seen the report yet, but I do think a lot of the activities that take place down at the beachfront should probably be BIA and should be led and funded by those that benefit from the beachfront. So those will be kind of my comments for that first position. The second one, that I know they're 2-year contract positions. I know there's more comfort to hire a contract employee because we all feel we can get rid of them a lot easier. On the flip side, they can also leave us a lot easier. There isn't the same commitment. I don't think you get the same quality of person sometime applying for a position when it's temporary. And what we have seen, and I've certainly seen in other organizations, is the turnover is a lot higher when it's a temporary position. I know the library certainly had issues with that. When there isn't that same commitment from the employer, your resume's out there and you're still looking. So I just wonder, at some point during that 1-year review, 2-year review, we can actually say, yes, it's working, and make a longer commitment so that we would hopefully get the quality, and we're not constantly changing the organization, because in special events, for example, we brought in some person, we've just lost them. So everything we built up last year in terms of experience is now gone, and we're back to where we were a year ago, where we're no further ahead. So I'm just kind of concerned. Final comment would be that if we're taking these responsibilities, so we're taking purchasing, we're taking fleet management away from our senior staff, that I imagine would affect their pay grade. I'm sure those are fairly key responsibilities in those senior jobs. So again, a year later, I think we should be looking at their position descriptions and seeing, hey, we've taken this away from you, then we should be reevaluating that position.
So if I may, Your Worship, just a comment, you raised some good points, Councillor. The contract, and I use the term contract to define a period of time, but I'm looking at these positions being filled internally. So these are staff that are permanent staff. They're going to be moving into new roles for a 2-year period, and certainly during that period we'll be able to do an assessment and whatnot. And as I indicated to the Deputy Mayor, if something doesn't work out and council at the end of the day upon review says, no, this is not something we want to continue doing, then they'll be able to go back to their existing roles. I'm just looking at this as a kind of a development opportunity for existing staff. But you're right,
So
at the bottom,
replacement positions that are more
at the bottom of the organization,
transient.
depending on what happens, yeah, that's where we're going to have the 2-year contract person. With respect to the comment about purchasing, we had this conversation as well. The responsibility for purchasing will still rest with the respective department heads. this individual will be part of the decision-making process. So they'll still be there to guide the department head, potentially, depending on the situation, be part of the evaluation team. The only areas that they'll be responsible for in terms of they'll be purchasing, dealing with fleet, and purchasing, dealing with down to property management, and purchasing actions dealing with the beachfront. But department heads will still retain that responsibility. They'll still be accountable. This will be kind of the quality control person to ensure that, you know, we're doing things on a consistent basis across the organization.
So it's more of an admin support than an actual. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stoffel?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I want to follow up on the comment of Councillor Bray pertaining to the proposed management board of the beach. We all know that came to committee before Christmas, I think quite a bit before Christmas, and it wasn't, committee felt that it really wasn't complete, so they referred it back to the CAO to bring forward with some revisions. And that isn't forward as yet, but it's coming. And I would assume it's coming, you had mentioned in your presentation, February?
Yes.
Okay, so that's fine. What I don't want to, or what I want to understand, and I want all of council to understand, that if this is approved today, and it goes to council a week from today and gets, or not a week from today, to the next council meeting, which is January, and gets approved, then I don't want to be taken that therefore it does away with the management board. If it's simply a case of making some decisions now, and should the management board concept carry, and should the proposal of the management board identifies what they're responsible for and what staff they have to operate, to carry out the operations, all of that stuff which we have yet not discussed. But if that is coming forward then and is carried by committee and council, then this can be massaged so that it makes room for the management board and whatever council decides on the management board. Now, if that isn't the situation, then I would just move that this be deferred until the management board comes forward. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to hold it up. I mean, I'm quite prepared to accept the word of the CAO and the commitment of committee that get this in place, proceed. And as far as the management board report that's coming in February, should that, or whatever form it takes, and whatever happens to it, that it doesn't stop the process of a management board. Now, I throw that in a form of a question to the CAO.
Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Worship. This report is based on what I feel as the CAO in terms of what's needed for the municipality going forward in these various areas, as we know today. As the councillor has indicated, there is a proposal to establish a beach one management board. That report will come forward in February. To answer the specific question, I'm not going to presuppose what council is going to decide with respect to the management board, but if council decides that it wants to implement a management board for beach area 1 and 2, what I'm showing here can be massaged.
Good. I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belanger?
My only question was, CAO, was when we do a 2-year contract, when we're moving people into a position of additional authority or responsibility, obviously there's compensation that comes along with that. And in the event that even though you're keeping a position open, even in the event that it doesn't work out and you want to move someone back, a reduction in compensation is never a really positive thing. So is there a planned phase-in of the compensation increase so that hopefully we could make a determination before we would create a negative impact or too negative an impact for an individual that would return to their former responsibilities.
Thank you, and the HR coordinator's here, and I'll attempt to answer. If I get anything wrong here, she can correct me, but
She will.
we're very careful when we, as an organization, to be very clear up front with our employees in terms of what the expectation is in terms of their employment and their compensation, and then what this means in terms if it's not successful and they have to go back to their regular position. They will be placed in a band appropriate to a wage band appropriate to their current wage, and pending their performance, they may move on that new band. At the end of the day, if they move back to their current band, and then their wage would be adjusted back to that wage that they had prior. If they're at the job rate, it would go to job rate. If it was through the grid, it would probably be a next step up, recognizing that they've done a good job for 2 years in this contract position. But the message is very clear up front in terms of what it is, the term, and what the expectations are, so that everybody is clear right up front.
So they're highly motivated for success.
All right, Councillor Ego?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just a quick question to the CAO. Under where you were talking about fleets and renewal of vehicles and stuff like that, excluding the fire department, have we ever done a study to see what it would be more economical to lease rather than to purchase?
We haven't done one in a while. I know there was some talk about the potential of leasing. And just to be clear, that the fire department will be involved. Certainly, they'll be directly involved in the purchase of fire trucks. This individual will be assisting the fire.
No, I
fire
understood
department.
that.
But I'm trying to remember how long ago it was that we looked at leasing. But I think as part of this individual's responsibility, now we'll have, because we have, say for example, we have a number of pickup trucks. Right. So, we could look at the potential of maybe leasing pickup trucks, so we can look at that as part of an option instead of purchasing. So I think that'll give the opportunity, the fleet manager will have that opportunity to look at those type of things.
I would assume, George, as part of this individual's job description, that it would be exactly that, to not only look at managing the fleet, but managing it as economical as possible. Did you have a
the reason I asked that question was because with the turnover of vehicles, like with bylaw and with pickup trucks and with numerous amount of vehicles, there's not that many miles put on them probably around town as what it would be if an individual owned them, driving all over the place. And I think that looking at the lease rate would probably be less than the amount of kilometers that would be put onto a vehicle. So it's just a thought of looking into it, just to see if it would be more economical, and that way the town could roll the cars over too, or the vehicles over every 3 years or something like that, and they're not dealing with any repairs or anything like that there. So just a thought.
Well, I think it's important to note that the KPMG report did note that we do have some vehicles that have very low mileage. They get 1,000, 1,200 kilometers annually. So part of this person's position, I would say, would be to rotate those so as that we are getting our money's worth out of the vehicle, whether it be lease or loan. But it's a good point that you make, Councillor. If that's the kind of mileage, we don't want to be owning them. That's
no,
for sure.
No.
All right, any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 or 3, George, if you don't mind. And the $100,000 that you're recommending for the new supervisor of events, does that include benefits as well?
Yes.
So that would be all in?
That's all that, yeah.
Okay. And the other one I had, I just wanted to be clear that the property management job that comes under the fleet manager and that for the beachfront properties is not leases or anything like that. It's just day-to-day maintenance, if I'm not mistaken, as far as the beachfront properties go. It's not, that's not where the leases are going to be approved and special events and all of that stuff. Okay.
Correct.
So I think just to clarify what Councillor Bray had said, that it is only just maintenance. And I'm just unclear with the budget as far as people moving around. But I really, if you're gonna be hiring inside, how many outside people are you looking at that would be new to the corporation?
I'm anticipating that there may be 2 or 3 that may be new at the bottom end of our organization. I know that there are people within our organization that are interested in these positions. They've gone to school, they've taken training. What they're lacking is an experience, and I think that there's an opportunity for them to move into these roles. But as I tried to explain earlier, there'll be this little ripple, and at the bottom, at the end, we'll have these entry positions that we'll look to fill. So that's, I'm anticipating maybe 2 or 3 entry-level positions.
Councillor Bray?
Just a suggestion, next time you can maybe have an org chart, just maybe if we can actually see those positions, it might be easier, because I was sort of drawing circles and then I got lost with what,
Sure.
because I don't know all the bodies that are in the
Spiral
current
graph?
roles, and yeah, so
Yeah.
I think it was just a little hard to see the total impact.
Glad to do that.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. It's moved by Councillor Eagle, seconded by Councillor Smith. Resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that it implement the following changes to the town's organizational structure. 1, transfer the Parks Division from Parks, Facilities and Recreation Department to the Public Works Department, effective March 6, 2017. Item number 2, reorganize the current Parks, Facilities and Recreation Department to become the Recreations, Events and Special Events and Facilities Department, effective March 6, 2017, pardon me. Item number 3, consolidate special events functions within the Recreation Facilities, Events and Facilities Department under the new division entitled Special Events, effective March 6, 2017. Item 4, create new working supervisory position for special events and fill the position on a 2-year contract based upon council approval of this recommendation. Item 5, create a new position of Manager Property, Fleet and Purchasing, reporting to the Chief Administrative Officer, to be responsible for the management of the beachfront properties as well as the other duties as described, and fill the position on a 2-year contract basis effective February 13th, 2017. And item number 6, to fill these new positions either through direct appointment or internal competition, and any resulting vacancies through internal competitions as professional development opportunities. Could you have added any more to that, George?
Well, I wanted to be clear.
Councillor Bray?
Just one question, with the direct appointment, does that in any way impact labor contracts that we may have with some employees? So a direct appointment versus an internal competition, which kind of gives everybody fair.
Through you, your worship, no, it does not.
Because these 2 departments at this point don't have.
All right, no other questions or comments? Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. With the motion having been read, I'll ask the members of council to vote with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Councillor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Eagle?
In favor.
Councillor Smith?
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell?
In favor?
Mayor Smith?
In favor?
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next item, the Simcoe County District School Board, response to Mayor Smith's letter dated November 21st, 2017. Any questions or comments on this? All right, I think I'll hold my comments as well at this point. So it's moved by Councillor Boulanger and seconded by Councillor Smith. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that it request a meeting with the Minister of Education to discuss the Simcoe County District School Board's position. Councillor Bray?
If I could make a comment. I got an invitation, I think, from you to meet with the parliamentary assistant at Roma.
That's correct?
So this meeting request will be on top of
That's
what
correct.
happens there.
Yeah, what we're hoping is to get a meeting with the minister at Queen's Park where we have some time to sit down and get into the nuts and bolts, and you're aware of all that, so.
Thank you.
Was there another hand up, sorry? No, seeing none. Madam Deputy Clerk?
With Your Worship, with the motion having been read, I'll ask the members of council to vote with an in favor or opposed. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Councillor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Eagle?
In favor.
Councillor Smith?
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell?
Favor?
Mayor Smith?
In favor?
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Moving on to the facade improvement grant, beach chiropractic. Johanna, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Floor is yours.
So I received a facade improvement grant application from Beach Chiropractic. They did request the full amount of the total eligible cost of $2,000. The request is to assist with new fascia, siding, soffits, eaves troughs, and decorative vinyl shapes for the exterior of the building. The building faces both Sunnydale and Moseley, so it does meet the objectives of improving the facade of the building that faces public roads.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Belanger?
Well, not a question. Obviously, probably most of us have seen the process of the work done on that building, and I think it was done extremely well. It was good to see a business going from a rental unit into an owned unit and making that kind of investment. So it was.
I do believe it was owned before, but it is a highly visible corner, and it's certainly good to see the improvement there on that corner for certain. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Bray?
Just a comment, I'm not sure if this has to pass council before they can proceed with the work, but I wouldn't want us to slow it down because they are obviously eager to get into the new building, so if approval at the committee can somehow let them proceed with the work, then that's all.
Speak to that. The program guidelines does provide an opportunity for the applicant to proceed with the work at their own risk once an application has been submitted.
So we won't be holding them up at all?
No.
I'm assuming they're going to do this work one way or the other. Okay, great. So it's a very good point. We don't want to hold them up. We want them to get moving. All right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, it is moved by Deputy Mayor by Folsey, moved by Councillor Smith, resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that it approve Miss Sarah Adams' application for funding under the Facade Improvement Program in the amount of $2,000 for exterior improvements to 1535 Moseley Street, subject to Miss Adams meeting all the town's requirements at the time of releasing the grant. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. With the motion having been read, I'll ask the members of council to vote with it in favor or opposed. Councillor Belanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor.
Councillor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Ego?
In favor?
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell?
Favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much. And moving on to item number 6, items for future meetings. We do have one alleged contravention of the Council Committee Code of Conduct by a particular member of Council Advisory Committee. This is brought forth by Councillor Bray and Deputy Mayor Byfolchi. We were talking about this earlier. Did you check the?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And the procedural bylaw says with the consent of the majority of council.
The show of hands is good. We don't need an official vote.
Yep, the consent of the majority of council.
Your Worship.
So, sorry, Madam Clerk, will that require then a show of hands or a vote?
It could be done by show of hands, if the committee would agree.
Could we have
Councillor Smith?
I just wanted to have a little bit more information on this item. It's very vague, and I just wondered if either one of the ladies would like to explain what's about it.
Well, Councillor, I think with all due respect to parties involved, that if we're going to do that, we will need to go in camera to do that. We're talking about identifiable individuals here, I would imagine. Would that be right, Madam Clerk?
With respect to this particular item, I apologize, I'm not entirely sure what.
There is an individual that serves on a committee that the members wish to speak about.
Just my point is, if this is the case, if it goes forward, then those meetings have to be in camera. If I don't know what the ladies are proposing, but I do believe that we need to have more information.
So I think what they're asking for here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is for a committee to say, yeah, let's go ahead and bring this back and have the discussion. Is that
In camera.
In camera.
It would have to be in camera. It's an identifiable individual.
Yeah, because we're still
Am I correct in that, Madam Clerk?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I apologize, I don't know the exact content or the discussion, but if it's about an identifiable individual, council may choose to go into a closed session.
So
to discuss it.
perhaps one of you ladies could explain, without using names, what the issue is.
I'd just like to explain the procedure as it was explained to me, was that if it went in this agenda as an item for a future meeting, that if council agreed, it would just go on the agenda in February, that we're not discussing it now, it's just you would accept that item for a future agenda. So I wasn't prepared to discuss it tonight, it was basically just, hey, if there's some support, then it would go on to a future agenda. At this point, I don't think referring this back to this issue to this council is going to accomplish anything of any great value, so I'm willing to pull it from the item list if that makes everybody a little happier.
So pull it, meaning take it off tonight's agenda?
You can take it off, yes. We can withdraw this from the item for future agenda.
Okay.
So it's done?
So it's done?
Okay. We'll never know.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Both in
There's-
agreement?
Yeah, I don't see the point in bringing it here.
Okay. All right, moving on, no closed session this evening, it's not required, and report from closed session is none, obviously, and this meeting is adjourned.
We have one more file from closed session, it's supposed to be the other day, are we?
No, that was supposed to be returned. Sorry. Yeah. The item was dealt with at council.
Okay. So I can-